All right, so I'm on 27 of skill 3. So if you take a look at it, we have two gases reacting to make up water vapor, so another gas. We know the moles of both reactants, so therefore you should be thinking limiting reagent problem, and he was kind enough to tell us hydrogen is the limiting reagent. So now you don't have to work both of them down. We can assume hydrogen's limiting. So if hydrogen limits us, how much of this are we going to have at the very end? And hopefully you're thinking 0. There's going to be 0 moles of hydrogen at the end because we're going to run out. So this will not influence pressure. What we're going to do now is we're going to use moles of hydrogen that we began with, 22 moles. We're going to figure out how much product we can make. And we're going to figure out how much excess is left over at the very end. So we're still going to do the chart, but we don't have to work both of these down to figure out limiting. We already know hydrogen is. So 2H2 plus O2 gives you 2H2O. If you're not a chart person, take your moles of hydrogen, work to moles of water. Then take your moles of hydrogen, work to moles of oxygen, and subtract these two numbers. All right, so I'm just going to do moles CE. We don't need to find mass because pressure is going to be determined by moles of a gas, not mass of a gas. So I have 22 moles of hydrogen over 2, 11. Move 11 here, times 1 is 11. I'll move 11 here, times 2 is 22. So at the very end, I have 22 moles of product. That's for sure. But I don't have 11 moles of oxygen. I react with 11 to make product, but I start it with 13.2. So 13.2 moles to start minus 11 moles that react, and you are left with 2.2 moles of oxygen at the end. So that will exert a pressure. So what should we do with our 2 moles once we know them? Let's add. So we should get 24.2 total moles. And the question wants to know what's pressure. So PV equals nRT. So pressure, volume was given, 25-liter container. Total moles will be 24.2. R, and then temperature. Instead of 127, we'll have to turn it into kelvins, and then we can just plug everything in. All right. Okay, E. I think that's the easier way to do it. Since we are on the new section with partial pressures and total pressures and mole fractions, you also could have found pressure using PV equals nRT with this many moles, pressure using PV equals nRT with this many moles, and then added them together to kind of use the new formulas. But we added the moles and then plugged it in, or you could have found the pressures then added. It doesn't matter. I just want you to know there's multiple ways to get the answers. And the last type of problem we're going to do is on the last page. I think it's the second to last page. And we're going to look at number 7 at the bottom. Okay. So we have a container with 2 gases. We know partial pressure of nitrogen, and we know partial pressure of xenon. What's the mole fraction? So if we know partial pressure of nitrogen equals 682 torr, we know partial pressure of xenon equals 834 torr. They want to know mole fraction of nitrogen. So think about mole fraction. There's 2 ways we could solve this. All right, the first is we could know moles of nitrogen and divide by total moles. Okay. The second thing we could do is total pressure times mole fraction of nitrogen gives us partial pressure of nitrogen. So I think this is the easier route because I already know partial pressure of nitrogen. I can find total pressure pretty quickly looking at this, and then I can solve for mole fraction. So how am I going to find total pressure? You add all your partial pressures up. So 682 plus 834 torr. And it's okay that they're in torr. They're in the same unit, so we're good. So 6, 1, 1. All right, so that's my total pressure. So now I'm going to plug that in for total pressure, solve for mole fraction, and plug this in for partial pressure of nitrogen. And mole fraction doesn't have a unit because it's moles over moles, so they would cancel out. So that's your answer. See? All right, so now I'm going to go on to skill 4, but remember all my solutions will be up on Moodle for the other problems. Email me if you have trouble.